I had a splendid voice. In fact, I'd sing in opera if they'd give me my choice. I wrote to Oscar Hammerstein that I would be his star. He said, come down and sing for me, and I'll see how good you are. And I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. No, I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. I sang the wise old owl, and he left the room at once. So I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months.
Welcome to the Recluse's Cookbook Series 3. I'm your host, Vinnie McHale. With anyone returning from the previous seasons, you're very welcome back. And for anyone who is new to the podcast, thanks a million for popping by. Remember, if you enjoy what you hear, then please like and share. My fourth guest of the season is Kenneth Strange Jr. The closest I have ever come to the FBI is at home, through the pages of a book or on a television screen. It was with great excitement I got to sit down and talk to a real live G-man. Kenneth Strange Jr. has had a fascinating career over the course of his lifetime. The son of an NYPD police officer, when the time came to serve his country, he chose the FBI and subsequently tackled international terrorism, global fraud, and the cartels on the border. He has also authored several books on different topics, and a fourth is about to be released in the coming months. A cop's son, one G-man's fight against Jihad, global fraud, and the cartels is the basis for this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I give you Kenneth Strange Jr.
So, Ken, can you tell us what it is that you are best known for doing by the public, or what is it you're best known for?
So I'm assuming that would be my federal service with the government. I worked, as you know, Vinny, I worked for three distinct and distinguished federal agencies during a 21-year federal career. So, I was with the F.B.I. and then on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, then the U.S. Agency for International Development overseas, both in the U.S. and overseas. I was based in Costa Rica and El Salvador there. And then finally, I ended up on the southwest border of the U.S. and Mexico with the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General, working on, I was with the Inspector General's office. So we worked a variety of cases, all kinds of cases on the border. So I think that's what I'm principally known for. But after a federal career, I did get on the corporate treadmill, and I did do work with the Siemens in Mexico City. I did that for 2 years and was up and down Latin America, South America. So I did that. And then I was also with a security company in Africa that did a lot of work in Africa. I did that. And with Corning Glass, upstate New York. And this is where I kind of saw the influence of the Chinese coming in and with economic espionage, things like that. So, it's really a lot, different things. But I guess mainly I'm known more for my federal career. And, I'm an author, so I have several books out. So I'm known for that. And I have another book coming out pretty soon, this 2026.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Kenneth, when you said, you've listed out your career there, but I think the best thing would be to go back to the start and tell us, how it came to be. Tell us a little bit about your background before you ended up in law enforcement and how you came, because it's not a light decision that one would make, because you probably could have had your choice of several careers before you chose law enforcement, but what was the situation that led you, I suppose, to choose law enforcement?
Well, I suppose it starts with my father because, I'm the oldest of five, and we're living in Brooklyn, New York, and he's working with the New York Police Department, and his career started in 1953, and he had a 38-year storied career with NYPD, but in my early life, I remember, going with him and my brother to pick up paychecks at the police precinct in Coney Island. I remember that. And just then he was assigned to a nearby motorcycle precinct nearby our house, and occasionally I'd see him in the neighborhood with his partner on a Harley Davidson motorcycles, like these super 1200s, and so I had that exposure to him and to what he was doing, and occasionally, in the summer there would be barbecues and police officer barbecues and softball, baseball games for the cops and their families. So that was a big part of growing up, and I really liked what I saw. I felt comfortable in that world because I liked the way my father interacted with other police officers, and I liked the other police officers and their families, and they were hardworking. Most of them were there to serve the public. I mean, it was just it was all about service, and so that was a big thing for me. And then later as I made it through adolescence and into college, and I always liked police movies, whether it was Serpico or The French Connection. I always took a shine to things like that. But I was never intimidated by police officers. In fact, quite the opposite. I looked at them as friends. And in the back of my mind, I always thought, I might like to try this. I might like to do this myself. But I got so involved in academia, and part of this is I blame my father for this, Vinny, because he is actually the person who started me in languages, in Spanish, which as you probably, you read the book, so you see how that worked its way through my life. But I just remember when I was a kid living in Brooklyn on 34th Street in Flatbush Avenue. One morning I went downstairs because I heard this noise. I woke up, I hear this noise, and there's my father in the basement, and he's listening to Spanish records, teaching Spanish records type thing. And he's speaking Spanish, repeating Spanish to the professor on the records. And he said, "Hey, come and join me." And I did. I joined him, and I started to practice with him. And I did that for quite a time. And I said, "Wow, I really love this language." Now, he was doing it because he wanted to know the Hispanic community better during his work, where he worked. And then he would go and have haircuts and take us, my brother and me, for haircuts at this barber shop, Nostrand in Flatbush, the Junction. And he would try to speak Spanish with the Puerto Rican and the Dominican barbers. And so I took that, I loved it. And then when I got into high school, I said, I'm going to take Spanish, fell in love with it. And then, the next thing I'm traveling to Spain on a class trip. And then the next thing I know, I'm in college and I had Spanish as my major. Then I went to Madrid. I lived in Spain for a year, again, building up my Spanish. And then when I got out of college, I taught Spanish at a high school in Long Island, LaSalle Military Academy, for 2 years, which ultimately would help me get into the F.B.I., into their language program, through the Spanish language program. Because, after I went to Saudi Arabia, after I came back to the States, I did my master's, my MBA, I was approached by the CIA, I was approached by the FBI, and the FBI fella said, "You'll never get rich, but you'll never get poor as an FBI agent, but we could use someone like you because you have that language, Spanish language skill, and also you've been to the Middle East and you know about terrorism and things like that." So, I've got to give it to my father. He really launched me into this thing.
So Spanish was your starting point. It's taking you all over the world, and again, you had choices that you could have followed. Like you said, you were a high school teacher for 2 years. You then decided to follow law enforcement, and you obviously have a choice here. You can either go into, I suppose, maybe it would be better if you explain the law enforcement agencies that are in the United States of America, because the vast majority of my listeners will be from Ireland, and we only have the one. We've An Garda Síochána. And we would
Right.
not be maybe aware if we've not traveled enough in the United States to know that there is a difference. It isn't all just one. Each of them has a very specific function in American society. Can you tell us a little bit more about, say, so you had a choice of maybe say the local law enforcement agency and then say the FBI, and what drew you to the FBI and what is its function in the law enforcement community in the United States of America?
Yeah, so I mean that's an excellent question that you have there, and so again, I remember speaking to my father, and I said, "Hey, Dad, I just got an offer to go into the FBI, but I really like NYPD," and he kind of said, "Look, I'm it's nice that you would think about the NYPD, but there's so many other federal law enforcement entities in the country, such as the Bureau, the FBI, but." And he told me at the time, there's also the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency. There's U.S. Customs, which it was called at the time. I think now it's Homeland Security. But so there were a number of agencies: ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, U.S. Marshal Service, Bureau of Prisons. So you could kind of pick and choose the different agencies, but as you hinted, each one of these had its own its own subject matter that it would handle. Like Department of Bureau of Prisons was the correctional facilities, and DEA was drug enforcement, and the Bureau was a lot of different crimes in the United States. And they would cover foreign counterintelligence matters, terrorism, foreign terrorism, counterterrorism matters, and they would do bank fraud and all kinds of stuff, fugitives, and they were probably the most diverse. For me, they were the most diverse, and probably the most noteworthy or most popular of the federal agencies out there. So, of course. I wanted to at least apply to the FBI. I thought that they're at the top of the ladder there. So that's what I did.
So it's interesting there. So they cover the 52 states of the United States, don't they? It's not just one state. They cover it. They encompass everywhere, and they enforce
50. Yeah, 50 states. That's right.
50
but
states. Sorry.
Vinny, they also have. And this program was just beginning when I joined the Bureau. They have the legal attaché overseas, where they send agents, agents with experience and with some skills to go overseas and to work out of the U.S. embassies and to coordinate with foreign police entities, wherever that country is. Mm-hmm. So that was a program that was just getting off the ground floor. And, had I stayed in the Bureau, I probably would have gone through the legal attaché route because that was pretty interesting. And it proliferated. After I went over to the Agency for International Development, as you know, but after my tenure with the Bureau, that program took off.
So I think I'll introduce your book, A Cop's Son, One G-Man's Fight Against Jihad, Global Fraud and Cartels. One of the parts I really, really enjoyed about your book, and I enjoyed all of it, but the one, obviously being a teacher myself, I really enjoyed the chapters about the training, the education you receive in the FBI, and kind of again, kind of going back to what we perceive here in Europe and certainly in Ireland, we get a very, very different idea of what a G-man might be. It's fairly Hollywood, I suppose, in our mind. But when I read your book, it's not quite like that. You have people from all walks of life who apply every year to join the FBI. Can you tell us a little bit more about your fellow recruits and kind of what walks of life did they come from?
No, that's a wonderful question. So I came at it a little late in the game in that the cutoff age for applying for the FBI when I went through was 35, and I was 34 when I actually applied. So I was when I was accepted and I ended up in a new agent class in Quantico at the FBI Academy, I was surrounded by 30 or 40 classmates that were younger than me. By some of them were about 10 years younger than me. I would say most of them were about. I say the average age was about 29 or 30, but I was 34 and I was out there. Now I believe the age has been extended to 37. But the classmates, they came from all walks of life. We had. I remember one guy. He was a banker, and he had a background in forensics, fraud, and that type of thing. And so he was there. He had a fraud background. There were some former deputy sheriffs. There were some police officers. There were military people that had been in the military for like 10 years or so that had done some incredible things in the military, and they had made it through. And then there was some, remember we had one or two school teachers as well. So really, people came from just about all walks of life, really. But yes, there were some law enforcement and some military people in the class.
So really, the skills is what can get you through the door into the recruitment. Maybe not necessarily into the FBI, but say life skills that you've garnered or you've gathered over time can get you certainly into training if possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the requirement was back in the day. It was 3 years. 3 years of 3 years of professional experience, whatever that would encompass. So I think it's pretty close to the same. I think it's pretty close to the same today. I actually looked at it the other day, but they wanted at least 3 years of work experience, at least.
And obviously, your 3 years of living in the Middle East and teaching at a military academy and all that. That was taken into account, was it?
That was taken into account. But remember, I went in under the language program. So they had a special language program. And so, you were tested. They would test you. You had to take several tests and if you passed that, then you could get into you at least be invited to Quantico. Of course, when you got to Quantico, well, you had to pass that test as well.
You must have been under enormous pressure, not just you, but everybody to perform to your best. I can't imagine what it's like, putting yourself through it. You're exercising, you're studying, you're being active, and you have to do it all, and you can't get it wrong. Did you feel? I mean, at once or twice in your book, you tell us about moments where I think as you were doing chin-ups or something where you couldn't. At the start, it looked as if you were beat. But could you just elaborate a little bit more on that kind of what that environment's like?
Well, Vinny, that's good. That's a good catch. There was a whole bunch of different things that you had to pass on the physical fitness portion of the test. Pull-ups was one of those, and for me, pull-ups was my kryptonite. And I'm constantly making excuses for myself, but I was 6'3", and that's harder. I noticed that the shorter guys and the women, it was easier for them to pull up their mass. The taller and the heavier the person is, the harder. I didn't do very well on that. In fact, I failed that particular station, pull-ups, and I had to. I did okay on the other stuff, although my 2-mile run left a lot to be desired. But I knew I could work on it in the 12 weeks that we were there. I knew I could get better. And what they did is very smartly, they send you to a remedial class in physical fitness. So that helped me immensely. But at the same time, there was kind of this, and you mentioned it best. You said there's kind of this pressure to succeed, and so I wanted to make sure that I did succeed. And so I went kind of above and beyond the call of duty here at night, when people were starting to turn in, I would actually hit these trails. They had these number of running trails around the F.B.I. Academy in the woods. and I would hit it at night because, well, there were a few reasons. I didn't want to fail. And, and you might remember in the book, there were two classmates that were not very kind to me. And they said some derogatory things about my capabilities. And I wanted to prove them wrong. And so I used that as kind of a fuel to better myself and, to pass the tests.
So it must have been some feeling when you did graduate. You became an FBI agent. Can you tell us a little bit about your initial first days out in the world and out in the field, and what it was
Yeah.
like getting used to it? Because again, it's one of these things. I sit at home and I watch a movie or something like that, and it just seems, it's going back to movies again. But I'm a massive movie buff, and I can't imagine what it must be like stepping from, say, starting from civilian world into training, and then from
Right.
the graduation into the actual job itself. It must be terrifying, elating, many, many different emotions. Can you describe it a little bit more for us?
Well, sure. I mean, my eyes were as wide as saucers when I got into that building, when I got into the squad area, and I'm looking at these men and women, and they are moving, and they were dealing. My squad was C10, and we were next to C9, which was a foreign counterintelligence squad. But it was open. The desks were out in the open. Kind of a bullpen scenario. We were handling so many terrorist groups, so many violations on terrorism. I mean, it was like, for me, I was so excited because I really took to terrorism, and I knew a lot about it. And so I was salivating, and I called it, the candy store of terrorism, because you could work any and everything from, PLO, Abu Nidal, Islamic Jihad, Sikh terrorism, Jewish Defense League, Black Liberation, IRA, you name it. We were out there hitting the streets, cultivating informants, working informants, and just trying to come up with intelligence so that there would not be, no Americans would get hurt in bombings or murders or things of that nature. But, you really had to come to it with your A game, because these were seasoned. We also had some New Jersey state troopers. We had a Secret Service agent as part of the terrorism task force. So all of us pulling together, but you had to bring your A game. And that's kind of funny, because when I showed up, my boss said, Strange, I don't know how you got on this squad, but you really shouldn't be here. If it were up to me, you wouldn't be here. And I thought, wow, what a welcome that is. He said, you should be doing what the other new agents do, applicant squad work, where you go out and interview people that are applying for federal jobs, which is kind of the normal way in for a newbie person. Maybe they do 6 months to a year of applicant squad work, but somebody noticed that I had been in the Middle East and I could speak basic Arabic and stuff. So I ended up on a squad anyway. So it was the best thing that happened, and it was exciting, very exciting work. But you really had to bring your A game.
You mentioned a list there of names that as soon as you started reeling off these names of terrorist organizations, my blood ran cold. Was that like a massive learning curve for you? Because it's you're just after saying there that you could have taken another route in there as a new person. You could have been checking people for federal jobs, but you get thrown
Right.
in amongst like the PLO,
Yeah.
IRA, whatever else have you. I mean,
Right.
it must have been like being hit with a bucket of icy cold water, was it?
Yes, I think you could say that. Yeah, I mean, you really had to get up to speed quickly. But I worked with some very wonderful men and women, and they knew I was the newbie, and so they taught me as much as they could. They took me around, and in the beginning, I went out. I had an agent who kind of mentored me, but because we were so few in number, he couldn't mentor me very long. I think it was maybe 1 month. And then they turned me loose, and like I said, the first case I ever had was this a possible IRA member in New Jersey who may have known something about a murder in the UK. So I was on my own, and you had to quickly get up to speed. But I enjoyed the work. I mean, I'm a people person, so and remember, I'm working in a lot of the Muslim communities there in New York and New Jersey, large communities. And so for me, it was, I knew the culture, the Muslim Arab culture. So I quickly made friends, and I found people that wanted to help the United States, and for various reasons. Some were altruistic, and some just didn't want bad people in their neighborhoods, and others came at it like, if you pay me money, I'll give you information. Others would say, "Oh, I want to be. If I work for you, I'm like a secret agent, right?" They wanted to be like secret squirrels. So there were all kinds of motivations for people helping you out there with information.
I think it's important there to say, you said something there a couple of minutes ago that I thought was very interesting. Like we're well, again, I suppose our notion of police is that guys sitting in offices following up leads and this, that, and the other. But how much of successful law enforcement boils down to informants, intelligence?
Yeah, no, that's good point. Well, yes, human intelligence. I mean, there's nothing. It's irreplaceable. Human intelligence is everything, and you are really in that type of work, especially in the terrorism task force. It's really who you know, and I got so successful at what I was doing that I actually two things happened. One guy calls me up and he says. He's from Lebanon, and he's living in New York, and he's kind of like this mafia Lebanese guy. And he calls me up and he says, "Hey, I heard you're in Newark. You're the new guy. You're the new agent in town." And just the balls of this guy to do this. And he says, "I heard about you. You're out in the streets. You're meeting people." He goes, "You know what? You need to meet me because I am it. I'm the man." And just his attitude, his egoism, I just thought that was hilarious. Did I talk to him? I did talk to him, but that guy ended up, he was an informant for one of our federal agencies. And in the end, he got wrapped up in he ended up going to prison. But I thought that was interesting. And then at the end of my FBI tenure, I got a call from a unit chief down in Washington, D.C., and he said, "Congratulations, Strange. You made it. You're on the top 10 list of the Hezbollah." And I said, "Holy cats, how did that happen?" And he goes, "I don't know. You must have pissed off some people out there. But, we have it from two distinct sources, separate sources, credible sources that they have you on a list. And we just want to make sure that that, and are you packing? Are you packing a weapon? That type of thing." So, I guess I was fairly good at what I did.
That's a credible threat to be on a list like that, I would think. Did that mean then, once you go on a list like that, that you finish within, say, that particular unit, like counterterrorism, or can you continue on in it?
So when I got the threat, I had actually left the FBI. I was now in Latin America working for another federal agency. And so that's when I got the threat. And they asked me, they said, and you remember from the book, the guy says, "You're packing." And I got so worried. I said, "You mean like packing to leave because you just told me this?" Or he goes, No, I'm packing a gun." And I said, "No, we don't pack overseas. We don't carry weapons overseas." And he said, "Well, I know there's diplomatic security. There's a contingent of diplomatic security officers at each embassy. You better get together with them and tell them what's happening and just so that they know what has happened and so you can get some protection." So of course I went to the officer at the embassy and I told him everything, and he said, "Okay, we'll take care of you." So that's the best they could do.
It's amazing that even though you had actually left that particular unit, you were still deemed as a threat that they put you on a list. Like
Right.
you must have been like seriously good at what you're doing, like a proper threat to them.
Yeah, no, I look, I loved what I did, and this was an amazing chance to serve my country, and I just felt like I was at the right place at the right time. I had spent 5 years in the Middle East. I knew Arabic. I knew the royal family. I knew what was happening politically, and I knew the threat that was coming our way, and that was in our country, and early Al Qaeda. So I was involved in all of that. So I took it seriously, and I couldn't. Let me put it this way, and I didn't make my wife very happy because I couldn't wait to get to work in the morning. I'd get there 6 or 7, and I wouldn't leave until like 7, 8 at night. It just it was consuming. If you wanted to do a good job and you're running a series of informants, that's the time that you needed to devote to that type of work. But I loved it, and I thought we did some pretty good work.
You moved on. You weren't just there in the counterterrorism unit. You also worked with global fraud, and I suppose it says in the book here the cartels. I don't know the official name for the unit. But could you tell us a little bit more about your move from, say, what you were doing how you started out, which was with the counterterrorism unit, into the global fraud and the cartels?
Right.
Was it an easy transition, and like was it planned?
No, it was not an easy transition. And after the first Gulf War, and that's one of the things that I was involved with, the first Gulf War. After the first Gulf War, there was kind of this lull. We had done all this work, and then kind of out of left field, some former FBI agents got in touch with me, and they said, "Hey, we've heard about you. You do some good work. We have an elite fraud unit down here in Washington D.C." And this one guy flew up to meet me in Newark, and we had lunch, and I said, "Look, fraud is not my thing. I don't have a background in fraud." And he said, "Don't worry about that. We'll teach you. But here's a chance. We know that you like to travel. You like foreign travel. You like to live overseas, work overseas, and we can do that for you." And so, I decided to kind of take a chance on that, and I joined. So I joined this organization, and I started off in Washington D.C. And I kind of glommed onto. I think it was 2 or 3 FBI agents that had backgrounds in fraud, and we also had former IRS agents also, very well skilled in fraud techniques and forensics. So I just kind of learned from these people. I went with them. I watched what they did. I learned, and the next thing I'm working all kinds of cases, fraud cases for this particular agency. There was a lot of money going through this agency, and it's been in the news recently. It's the U.S. Agency for International Development, AID. It was formed in the 60s under John F. Kennedy, the president. And so there were monies going all over the place, all over the world. So there was, of course, the chance of fraud. And so I worked several cases. I had a big case out of Egypt. It was Egypt and South Carolina, and then local embezzlement cases, and just about everything in between. I ended up on the Mosquito Coast checking out some fraud allegations, and so it gave me a great opportunity to travel. And I was, like I said, I was based in Costa Rica, then El Salvador, and I did a lot of work in the Caribbean, in Haiti as well. So. It wasn't, let me put it this way, it wasn't what I did the best, but I worked very hard at it. And, I ended up making some pretty good cases. I learned a great deal.
It's something that I don't really think about too much, global fraud or fraud. I know it exists, but I never really think about those who commit it. And currently in Ireland, there's been a very famous case involving a celebrity who was basically defrauding friends out of money. And it kind of made me sad because it's someone who was quite talented made a decision to go down this road. From your
Mm.
observation of what you observed over those years working for global fraud, what is it that pushes people into this? Because we get, again, it's this thing, we get obsessed about serial killers and mafia and whatever else, drug dealers, but this thing called fraud is never really given enough acknowledgement, I suppose, really, and how
Yeah.
even like the most straightforward person can fall into it. Well, just out of your observations and your experience, what are the indicators, or what can happen to a person that ends up in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different type of case. It's a different type of crook. It is people that I think are inclined to steal, and what they do is they kind of wait for the right opportunity, and then some of them, they'll try to justify it by all kinds of means. I wasn't treated well by the company. Um, I deserve the money that I'm working with. I deserve a piece of it. There are a lot of these type of fraudsters. They have so many different reasons for defrauding people, but many of them, they're just waiting for the chance, and it happens over a period of time where they get jaded, or they're angry with their employer, or they see monies that they think, no one's looking really here. No, it's not that. It's not like committing murder. It's not really a crime. It's a victimless crime. That was my experience with fraudsters, and they, they're always smarter. They think they're smarter than everybody else, but inevitably, it's the greed. It's the greed that trips them up, and they get caught.
Yeah, you said something there. No one's looking, but obviously somebody is looking. There sounds like there's a level of entitlement here, or something, or narcissism,
Yes,
maybe.
yes. Yes, yeah, many of them. That's a nice way of putting it. There is a sense of entitlement, but there's all kinds of. And just one case, and it was pretty. When you look at it, it was a pretty minor case. I mentioned it in the book, but it was just one of embezzling monies, and this was a person who had an addiction to crack back in the day, and if you might remember that story,
I do,
and so
yeah.
he was and so there he would be going around, and he would just, I guess he was a contractor taking orders for the agency. And then the interesting part, I said, how did you do it? I mean, how were you able to get away with, for a year and a half of just ordering all these things, and then they would come in, and then you would sell them on the street for crack? How did you do that? And he said, well, I knew the weakness of my boss. He would sign all the requisitions on Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, when he wanted to leave. He was in a rush, and he really wasn't looking at each paper, each requisition. So he would just sign off on these things. And so he said, I always approached him at the end of the day when he was under great stress to get out of the office, and I would put the papers in front of him, and he would say, "Oh, Fred, it's you. I got to go. Okay, here," and he would sign off without looking. And this went on and on and on for about a year and a half. So he knew the boss's weakness, and that's how he did it. But it's interesting because you look at these people as your adversary, but this guy was, if he didn't have an addiction, we could have been friends. He was that type of guy. I ended up talking to him about basketball and traveling and stuff like that. He was actually a fairly decent guy, but he had a sickness.
I think you said that there, the sickness, and it kind of brings us to the next stage in your career that you write about in your book, which is the cartels. You spent some time on the border.
Yes, that's right. I was actually in El Paso, Texas, for 5 years, and then I was assigned to Los Angeles, which is we have a satellite office in San Diego, which is pretty much the border.
And can you, like, I suppose, I don't know, I've never been, but can you just describe what, say, El Paso and the border area was like back then, and maybe what it's like today, if possible.
Well, I can only I can only summarize it by something my father said to me. He came down to visit me in I think this was 1997. No, I'm sorry. Make that 2002. So I came down to El Paso from New York, and he's retired by this time. And I took him out on the land bridge, and this is where the traffic is coming in. You see it in the movies, Sicario, or there's another movie, another famous movie. I forget it, but at this time. But I just remember walking out there on the bridge, on this land bridge, and you see all the agents inspecting the vehicles, and then there's a sidewalk where the vendors are. They're coming in, people coming in for the day, signing in, then going back. And I just remember my father looking out over all of this, and in the background is Ciudad Juarez. Juarez is back there with this huge mountain of dirt, and he said, "My God," he said, "there are thousands of stories in this place." He knew it. He could feel it as a cop. And I just smiled at him. I said, "You got that right, Dad. There's a lot of stories here." There was, the border was just a unique place. Any place that I've been in the world is nothing quite like it. It was Mexico, but it wasn't Mexico. It was the U.S., but it wasn't. It was kind of its own animal, and it invited the good, the bad, and the ugly in this place. So we had just everything. You had the cartels on the other side, and at the time, the biggest one was the Vicente Carrillo Fuentes organization, VCFO, and they had put a bounty on all of us government workers at one time, and I wasn't really worried about that because it seemed like they were doing that all the time, but it was a dangerous place, and there was a lot of corruption on the border, and so I was now with the Department of Justice. Office of Inspector General. So I had overview to a lot of different federal agencies. And, it was kind of ironic because I was an FBI agent in the beginning, and now I was investigating FBI agents for corruption. I was investigating DEA agents or Marshal Service or Border Patrol. And it's kind of interesting. It was I actually met Tom Homan. I actually worked with Tom Homan, who you may have heard of in Ireland. He's the head of ICE right now. Not a very popular organization, let me put it that way. But I knew all of these people, and there was just a lot of corruption on the border.
It sounds as if you're describing a bit of a no man's land there. That's kind of like anything could happen, or because I find it very, very. I couldn't imagine someone here having the audacity to put a bounty on all our, say, solicitors and lawyers and judges and on Garda Síochána. I mean, when you put it to me like that, it's only now that I've heard of it, I've seen it in the movies, but it's only now I'm beginning to understand the level of danger that there is working on the border in these types of jobs.
Yeah, and I mean, look, they would use that as a threat, but I thought it was kind of innocuous. The threat was innocuous, but there was again, just to give you an idea, there were when I was in El Paso, we had a rash of missing women. Hundreds and hundreds of missing women, and that became a real crisis. And the FBI had to go across the border and help the Mexican federales to try to solve this crime. That was one thing. And then, of course, the cartels were playing cat and mouse with our federal guys, our inspectors, our Border Patrol agents, constantly trying to corrupt them with sex, with money, you name it. And, there were takers. We had, and unfortunately, Border Patrol got hit very hard because they had rushed people through the system because there was a lack of Border Patrol and there's a big rush to get Border Patrol. They kind of shortened the requirement, cut down some of the requirements. The time serving, the training was decreased, and so they ran these people through. And unfortunately, they weren't able to catch some bad people who ended up wearing badges and were now having contact with Mexican nationals. So that became a problem for us. We had a number of Border Patrol agents that they just they went over to the dark side.
So, I mean, money is obviously the main reason behind all this for these people. Like to make this, to do a job and then decide I'll do the job, but I'm quite happy to play with my foot on the other side of the field as well. I mean, it
Right.
must be lucrative for them, is it, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but you could make a lot of money, but eventually, and you know how this is, eventually you will be caught. Um, the people, I think the most successful crooks or criminals that wore badges worked alone because if they worked in a group, you catch one and they'll rat out the others. So I noticed that the most successful, the ones that did it the longest without getting caught, usually worked alone. But even those people, and you might remember the last chapter about the dirty dog handler.
Yeah.
He worked alone for many years, but even at the end, his life spun out of control, and in the end, we took him down. Um, but yeah, I mean, the border. It's going back to that whole thing about border. It's a place on earth unlike any other. Just that's the only way I can describe it.
I have a question I have to ask because you've worked in this particular area to fight it, but have we, as Western society, normalized drugs, and if so, like illegal drugs?
So you're talking about legalizing drugs, meaning
Well,
the
have we?
society should or what?
No, have we normalized it? In the sense, I walk down the street now, and basically, I can smell weed, cannabis,
Oh, oh, sure.
and
Oh, yeah.
people,
Me
people,
too. Me too. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like, and people have no problem at all lighting up and walking around and showing baggies and stuff like that.
Right.
Have we normalized illegal drugs as
You
Western
know
society?
that I can only say when I'm thinking of marijuana, right? Because the harder drugs, which were trafficked and are trafficked, and the more the more things change, the more they remain the same. Um, back in my day, it was marijuana and cocaine, and now it's cocaine and synthetic pills. But I just think when they with the marijuana, when they went to legalization in the states, I just think that was kind of it had an effect, kind of a cascading effect on how the American public and how the states would look upon marijuana usage. And for me, when I went through the system and when I was applying, they gave you some wiggle room for experimentation. You could put down on your application. Well, I experimented, and I think it had to be under five times or something, or I used it 5 times and less. But now, I mean, that's gone by the wayside. Now they don't. They will ask about marijuana usage, but they're not holding you to 5 or 10. They just don't. It seems like it's kind of a free for all with marijuana, and like I said, some of the states have it legalized, so I see it going in that direction. But I think that's how that started. As far as heroin pills, the biggest problem we have today is really with the synthetic pills, with the fentanyl, and that's been a major killer here in the United States.
And who are the real victims in all this? Like, here we are talking to this, but who is directly affected by all this?
Well, I think the victims here are the users. Of the specific drugs because if you get drugs and they're laced with like fentanyl, you're gone. And some of the stuff that they're trafficking, it can kill like 500,000 people. It's got so much. This stuff is so potent. This is my understanding. So of course, these are young people that are experimenting, and sometimes they don't even know that what's in the pill, and it may have been laced with fentanyl. They think they're getting something else. So of course, the American public in this case, we are the victims and the losers. But The cartels are there to always exploit it. It's cash, it's money, it's big money for them, and so they'll continue to do this because they're making tremendous profits.
So you finished up with the FBI and you moved on. So what are you at now, Ken? You're an author of several books. Two of them. One I've got here, A Cup Son, and you also wrote a book about walking the Camino. Uh,
Yeah.
what else have you got going on?
Yeah, so I mean, the first book, The Camino, was something I'd always wanted to write. I've been writing all my life since I was a kid. So I always thought, once I finish up raising kids and finishing my professional career, I can turn to writing, and that's what I've done. So I came out with It's Your Camino, the travel adventure book about the hiking the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, and I wrote that and. People liked it. I got some awards for it, which surprised me. And I thought, wow, this is fun. I'll continue doing so. And I'd always wanted to write a book about my father and his influence and some of the work that I did in the federal government. And so I kind of wrote that book at the same time I did the Camino. And that has done pretty well. It's gotten some awards. And so I have another book coming out in 2026. It is a travel log comedy coming of age love story. So this is kind of my first love story here, and it's got a lot of comedy in it, and I think readers will like it. It's called Land of Sand, and it's about my time in Saudi Arabia working as an English teacher for the royal family.
So that's my interview with Kenneth Strange Jr. Please see all links relating to Kenneth and his work down below and check them out. You will not be disappointed. We'll be back in a fortnight with our next guest. Until then, please like and share where and when you can. Until next time.